Ever heard of Guangdong? Also known as Canton in European circles. It used to be very important for Westerners, and for China it's still a very big deal. So you should have heard of this place, or at the very least know some things about it. Don't worry, this video will help you with that. Guangdong is a big coastal province of China located in a strategically important location of the Asian continent. And just how big is this place? Well, by area it's larger than 100 countries of the world, but population-wise, well, 126 million people live in Guangdong. If it were a country on its own, it would be the 11th most populated nation, surpassing countries like Japan or Philippines. But it's not a country, it's a province of China, and it's the biggest the country has. It's also the second most populous national subdivision in the world after India's Uttar Pradesh. You won't find a larger economy than Guangdong's anywhere in China, with a GDP of $1.95 trillion. Only California and Texas as subdivisions have a larger economy. Guangdong is a global center for high-tech manufacturing and trade. Two of the biggest megacities on the planet, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, are located right here. If these stats didn't grab your attention, I don't know what does. So pay attention, because Guangdong is actually a vital node in the global economic network. If something goes wrong here, you will feel the effects no matter where you are in the world. So how did this province get to where it is today? For that, we need to take a look at its history. Ever since the Qing dynasty first unified China 2,200 years ago, Guangdong has been mostly a part of the Chinese nation. And since ancient times, this province, known back then as Zhaozhi, was a gateway for Western traders. And I ain't kidding. Chinese goods reached the Roman Empire via Guangdong's ports and vice versa. Also since ancient times, Guangdong was a diversified land. Persians and Malays lived side by side with the Chinese, and Muslims, Hindus and Buddhists erected their houses of worship alongside the Chinese temples. As time passed, Han Chinese became predominant as massive waves of migrants and refugees came here. By the 16th century, Guangzhou, the capital, was for all intents and purposes a global port city. It was at this time that European traders, particularly the Portuguese and the British, began exchanging goods with the Chinese from here. The first European settlement, the famous Macau, lying on the southern coast of Guangdong, was established by the Portuguese in 1557. Europeans realized that trade with China was vital for their economy, so they did everything they could to keep their presence in what they called Canton. And that, of course, meant some dirty practices too. In the 19th century, British traders began selling opium in Guangdong in exchange for silver, which led to some major social upheavals. And yes, British narco trade started not one but two wars, the infamous Opium Wars that China lost alongside Hong Kong and other concessions. If you're interested in the details, check out my video on the Opium Wars, you'll get more details there. Because Guangdong had a continuous direct contact with the rest of the world, it was also the source of other major changes in China. For instance, Hong Xiuquan, the self-proclaimed brother of Jesus who started a civil war in which 20 million people died, was from Guangdong. Sun Yat-sen, the generally acknowledged founder of modern China and the first president of the Republic of China, was also from here. So as you can see, Guangdong was also pretty important and influential in China too. And throughout all the wars, rebellions and regime changes, the cities of this province kept their status as vital ports for foreign traders, and that hasn't changed a bit to this day. Guangzhou is the mighty capital of Guangdong. It's been known as Canton for Westerners, and for a while it used to be the only Chinese port accessible for foreign traders. 18.7 million people live in this megacity, and still it's only China's third largest city. Not only that, but Guangdong is at the heart of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, a megalopolis that's the most populous built-up metropolitan area on the planet with 65.6 million residents. It's one of the best commercial cities of the country, a leading financial center in the Asia-Pacific region, a major center for R&D, one of the world's leading cities actually, and of course it's ranking high in the number of billionaire residents. Guangzhou is over 2,200 years old and it has seen Now let's have a quick look at Guangdong's roaring economy. After all, a GDP of $1.9 trillion would rank it as the world's 10th largest economy. Now, it has to be said that after the communist takeover of China, Guangdong was sort of irrelevant for decades. But once China adopted an open-door policy and reformed its taxation system, things changed. During the 90s, Guangdong's economy boom began and it hasn't stopped ever since. 12% of the nation's economic output comes from this province alone. With 6 special economic zones and 21 economic and technological development zones, Guangdong has become the largest importer and exporter of China. 60,000 factories work 24/7 to produce goods for China and the rest of the world. This is truly a place that never sleeps. Guangdong's capital isn't the only city the province can brag about. Another much better known urban center also lies right here, Shenzhen. 17.5 million people live here, which makes it China's 4th largest city right after Guangzhou. Keep in mind that in the 1800s, Shenzhen was no more than a village that grew into a market town, and by the 1970s it became a city, and by the 90s it engulfed the entire county within which it lied. If you don't really know where Shenzhen is, it's north of Hong Kong, that city's only neighbor. Today, it's the world's 4th busiest container port, and the impressive stats just keep coming. It's among the top 10 cities with the largest economies in the world. It's the 8th most competitive and largest financial center. It's also 8th with regards to the number of Fortune's Global 500 companies that are headquartered here. It has the 5th highest number of billionaires, the 2nd largest number of skyscrapers, and has one of the highest scientific research outputs in the world. Shenzhen has been called China's Silicon Valley, rightfully so. Companies like Huawei or DJI are from here. Okay, enough stats. We get it. Guangdong has some impressive numbers. Now let's move on. With such a large population and a huge number of migrants, Guangdong is bound to be a cultural melting pot. Or so you'd think. In reality though, official statistics say otherwise. The absolute majority, around 98.5%, is held by the Han Chinese. The remainder 1.5% is filled by mostly other Chinese ethnic groups like the Teochew, Hakka or Yao. The main language that you'll hear is the Cantonese dialect of Chinese, a language spoken not just in Guangdong but also in Hong Kong and Macau. And it is largely not mutually intelligible with Mandarin, either in the spoken or in its written form. According to the same official statistics, most residents are irreligious or at least don't belong to organized religion. 91% of the population are either atheists or practice some form of Chinese folk religion that involve nature gods or ancestor veneration. The rest follow Taoist, Buddhist or Confucian traditions, or maybe Christianity. I don't know about you, but I find it strange that such a bustling and active province is so homogeneous. There's one more aspect we need to settle before we finish. Actually, 2 things: Macau and Hong Kong. Historically, both had been a part of the Guangdong province and culture, and yet today they are separate. And the reason, or culprit for that, is Europe. Hong Kong was ceded to the British Empire in 1841 in the aftermath of the First Opium War. After the Second Opium War, this now British colony was further expanded with the Kowloon Peninsula and Stonecutters Island. In 1889, Britain obtained even more land and a 99-year lease of the territories. Thanks to civil wars on the mainland, the Japanese invasion in World War II, and the takeover of China by communists in the late 40s, Hong Kong became a safe haven for refugees and it rapidly grew into a global financial center. When the lease expired in 1997, Hong Kong was transferred back to China, where it remained separate from Guangdong as an autonomous region. Macau was officially established as a Portuguese trading post colony in 1554 through a permanent lease with China. Despite many setbacks and uncertain times, Macau also developed into a major trading port and managed to remain under Portuguese administration for a long time. In 1966, local riots erupted and Portugal lost full control of Macau. From then on, they cooperated with the Chinese Communist Party all the way up to 1974, when Portugal went through its own revolution and relinquished control of Macau to China. Macau was still under European control, but was now a quote-unquote Chinese territory under Portuguese administration. It was in 1999 that Macau's full transfer to China took place, where it also retained its autonomy and did not rejoin Guangdong. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave. Leave your comments downstairs, and if you wish to do so, you can help out this channel through my Patreon page. I do hope to see you next time. Bye.